people on here may have never heard you talk about it, or they may have, but you have said that access bars literally saved your life. Do
Yep.
you want to talk a little bit about your stories? That's not an understatement.
Yeah, you're making me cry because every time I think about it, it's like I remember what my life was like 20 plus years ago and how much I had given up hope. And for me, it's like if I didn't have hope for something greater, I didn't want to be alive. And so here I was, a chiropractor in Santa Barbara, and I'd wanted to be a chiropractor for years. I finally graduated from school and was starting my second practice in Santa Barbara, and I had this beautiful girlfriend who was mean, by the way, but I didn't know it at the time. I think a lot of us do that, unfortunately. And I was unhappy for the better part of 3 years. And from the time I was a little kid, people would say, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I go, "Happy." And they were, "Good. Do you want to be like a doctor, an actor, a lawyer, a garbage man?" I'm like, "Yes, as long as I'm happy." And I knew this from the time I was a little kid, even though I was primarily surrounded with unhappy people. Um, and so there was this drive to find that. And I had done every technique I could find. I literally was reading 5 books at a time, trying to find happiness. Like, oh, and as I look out, the horses are running across the field. There are a few things more beautiful than a huge group of horses just
Oh, I
running.
wish you could show, but
Oh, I
yeah.
know. If I were on my phone, I could. Um, and of course, now they're out of shot anyway. And wow, what a difference in my life today. But so I was one of these people that would do weekend workshops continuously. And what's interesting is I know a lot of people who come to Access and they go, "I don't think I'm a seeker. I didn't do all kinds of workshops and read all kinds of books." I'm like, "Yeah, but you're here, right?" They're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "You know something else is possible?" "Yes." I'm like, "You're a seeker. Shut up. Get to work." Anyway, but for me, I knew I was always the weirdo in chiropractic school that was trying muscle testing and releasing emotions out of the body and, all this sort of woo woo stuff. Because I knew there had to be more than this friggin' reality that everybody thinks is so real. And yet I couldn't seem to create it. So I was struggling financially. I was struggling in my relationship. I was really struggling dynamically with my sense of self worth and hating myself more often than I liked myself. And so, and what would happen is I'd go to a weekend workshop and I would feel like everything had changed. I'm like, "Yay, I found the answer." And by Wednesday of the following week, the universe crashed in on my head again. And it felt like I'd lost everything that I'd gained over that weekend. And it was actually on one of those days, and it was a Wednesday after a workshop that I thought was so amazing and phenomenal, where I thought I'd finally found the answer and I was going to get to be happy. And it all went away. And I went, "Universe, you got 6 months. Either my life changes or I'm killing myself." And I meant it. And I planned a date, and the date wasn't going to be on Christmas or a holiday or anybody's birthday that I cared about, because I didn't want them remembering me after I had gone. And I knew how I was going to do it so it wouldn't be reversible. And I was like, "I'm out of here. Thank you." And I thought in making that demand, I was going to get to leave the planet because I stated my demand to the universe. And I really truly thought that, that there wasn't anything available that would create the change because I'd done everything I could find. And so I'm leafing through the independent paper in Santa Barbara the next day, and because it comes out, I think, on Thursdays. And I'm leafing through the paper, and all I see is this tiny little classified ad that is in the tiniest writing. It was the cheapest ad you could buy, okay? And it said, "Access, all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. Call Shannon." And I read it, and I was like, "Fuck you. My life is pain, suffering, and gory," right? At an ad. I'm just pissed at these 2 little lines. And I throw the paper away. And I was just like, "Oh my God." So anyway, I pick up the paper the following week and I'm reading through it. And the only thing out of 100-page big old paper my eyes focus on in the classified section that I never look at is, "Access, all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. Call Shannon." And I was like, fuck. Okay. And I learned long before that, whether you love something or hate it, there's something there for you. So I called her and I'm like, "What do you do?" And she said, "Well, we do all kinds of stuff. And a good place to start would probably be with this thing called the bars. And at the worst, you'll feel like you had a good massage. At the best, your whole life will change." And in the back of my head, I'm going, my whole life better change or I'm killing myself. I've got my plan. And I figured it wouldn't work anyway, so I'd get to die like I really wanted to at the time. And so she comes to my chiropractic office, and I lay down on my chiropractic table, and she puts her hands on my head, and she does the energy pull, and I feel this energy that feels like, oh, like being cradled by angels. I mean, it was just like this peace, and I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So I just relaxed into it. And it's funny because I'd never met this girl before, and, but I just totally relaxed, and I was like, oh my God, this is nice. And after a few minutes, there started being this other energy, and there was this joy. And I started giggling like a little kid. And I was like, and she would put her hands in different places, and I would giggle more every time she moved her hands to a different place. And after an hour and 15 minutes, I got up, and I was like, whoa, I felt like somebody just like put me in a blender and spun off all the dark, yucky, ucky bits. And I remember looking out at the clouds in the sky, and I looked up out of this window of this office that I hated. And I was like, wow, has it always been this beautiful here? And I thought to myself, if it can be this beautiful to be alive, I'm in. I do not want to die. I am in. And it, from that point, we did a session every week. And the interesting part is I couldn't afford to pay for the sessions. I was barely paying rent. And so we traded chiropractic for bars. And I'm so freaking grateful that number one, Shannon wanted chiropractic, but also that she was willing to do that because it made it accessible to me. And one of the things that she did the very first time we got together, she said, we've got these tools in Access. She says, if you use, she said, the bars, they're amazing. She said, but we have this entire body of work that changes things for people. And it's like, that's where you exponentialize the effect of this. And I went, okay. And she said, because you'll feel great right now. She's like, but there's a lot of energies that are out there that you've made real over the course of your life, and they will come back and try to haunt you again. And I went, okay. And she said, so I'm going to just give you a tool every week when we get together. I went, cool, that's great. I'll do it if you give it to me. And so she wrote down in her handwriting that is just as wonderful as mine, as illegible as mine, if you want to put it that way. She wrote down, who does this belong to, on a little yellow sticky note. And so I got home that night, and I was so excited to be alive. And I was like, oh my God, because when you tap into the energy, it's one thing for people to tell you, you should be grateful. It's something for somebody to tell you, well, you should be happy. You should have a level of peace. But it was being it. It was like it opened the door to actually being it. And so I get home, and I'm just thrilled to be alive. And I'm like, wow. And I unload my stuff in my pockets because I'm like a little 6-year-old. I should have had a frog in there too. I have all this stuff in my pocket. So I unloaded on my nightstand, and I put the little sticky note there by my clock. And so I'm living life just loving it and enjoying it and seeing amazing possibilities. And a few days later, I wake up, and I felt like the weight of the world had crashed in on me again. And what would happen for me was I would wake up in the morning prior to Access. I would wake up in the morning, and I would be so depressed. I literally would cry in bed, feeling like I just can't do it. I don't know if I can do it another day, and I would be like, okay, fuck, I've got people, and here I am, a doctor, and doing not just bone cracking, but doing like the best to do true healing work that changes people's worlds, not just their bodies, and trying to provide for them. It was like, how do I do this? I don't have enough for myself. My batteries are not only empty, they're like on negative charge, right? And so I would cry, and I would always look over at my clock to see how much longer I could wallow in self-pity before I had to get up and go change the world. And the funny part was, getting up every day was more a function of the fact that I had these people to contribute to, a lot of whom were receiving it, and that was the one thing that put a smile on my face every day. And so I wake up a few days after bars, and the same fucking thing is there, as intense as it was before. And I'm like, oh, please no. Like, please no, And I look over at my clock, to see how much longer I can just lie there and hate myself. And I see this little yellow sticky note, and it's and I read the words, "Who does this belong to?" And it went away. I was like, what? 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 And I just sat there for a moment going, where did it go? What is it? And then I remember Shannon's words in my head that I had totally forgotten and totally ignored because I was just so happy. I figured it would stay that way forever. And she said, 98% of your thoughts, your feelings, and your emotions don't belong to you. And you're a healer, yes? I went, yeah. She said, you're really aware. And that awareness, when you're aware of how sad people are, how depressed, how much they're judging and all that sort of stuff, number one, you try to cut it off, but number two, you think it's yours. She said, use "Who does this belong to?" for 3 days and ask it to every thought, feeling, and emotion and every weird energy that comes up. And if it lightens up, it's not yours, return it to sender. Well, I hadn't done that, of course, being the humanoid that I am. I'm like, I'm happy, fuck it all. No, that's all I wanted. My eternal target has been achieved, right? And and so here it was. And from that moment, I went, okay, I'm going to do this for 3 days because I realized how much impact it had. And the interesting thing about this is what I see is when we, yeah, who does it belong to? Definitely is more like 99,000% during Corona time. Mm-hmm. One of the interesting things about that was I didn't place much value on the tools. I wanted somebody to do something to me to change me, like most people do. And what I've realized over the years is the tools is actually what gives us the power. The tools of access are what give us the power to change our lives. Meme. And figured it's a meme. Why does, let people know that. And here's the interesting thing, right? So I had this experience with "Who does this belong to?" And I mean, you could say the universe was grooming me, to actually know this shit works and be able to actually talk about it with a level of certainty in my own world. Because if I don't believe in something, I won't talk about it, right? And I won't tell people about it because if I don't believe in it, I'm not gonna lie to people. And so what happened was a few days later, the following, I had done "Who does this belong to?" for 3 days. And I got to tell you, oh my God, I can't tell you how many thoughts, feelings, and emotions were going through my head on a daily basis. Sometimes I would sit there in a conversation with somebody, or when I went to my ex-fiance's Christmas party, and literally through my head the entire time while everybody's talking and everything, every energy that came in, I went, "Who does this belong to? Who does this belong to? Who does this belong to?" In my head, "Who does this belong to? Who does this belong to? Who does this belong to?" It was the first time I ever left their house or one of their parties lighter than when I had gone in. And that was running through my head the entire time. So a lot of people go, "Who does this belong to?" I must identify the thought, the feeling, or the emotion. Or if you haven't heard about this tool, you want to research it. We have an app for it now and everything to make it easier. But so I was doing this and it changed so much. So I have this guy come into my office the following week, and he's one of these people that I had been treating him for months because he was in such intense pain. And I finally said to him one day, a couple of weeks before this, I said, you really need to go see somebody else, because what would happen is his back pain was so bad. He was at like an 8 out of 10 on the pain scale, 10 being childbirth. Okay. He was at an 8 out of 10 on the pain scale. And he would come in and it would take him 5 minutes to lie down and relax. And after I worked on him, he would get down to like a 3 or a 4. And then next time I saw him, he'd be at an 8 out of 10 again. And for me, that was frustrating as fuck. It's like I did this to create change. I didn't want somebody continuously coming back if they weren't getting change. And so I told him he should go see somebody else. He said, "Doc, you don't get it. I have been to everybody else. You were the only one who gets me out of this much pain." And I was like, oh, okay. 2 things, one is, fuck, I'm stuck with this guy. And 2 is, shit, what's it going to take to actually change this? And I remember specifically asking that question.
That's a great question.
Isn't that a great question? By the way, everybody out there, for whatever you got going on, what's it going to take to change this if it's something you want to change? And And so he comes into my office the following week after I've had bars and who does this belong to epiphanies, right? And so he comes in and he's at an 8 out of 10 again. And I'm like, how you doing? And, he tells me everything and blah, blah, blah. Takes him 5 minutes to get down, to relax enough to where his body can lie on the table without pain or without whatever, with less pain, let's put it that way. And I said, hey, I got a question for you. Um, who does that pain belong to? And he pushes himself up, turns over and goes, my wife. And I was like, okay. Second, who does this belong to? Miracle, right? Like instantly, a guy who was in massive amounts of pain. And I was like, okay, you got to tell me the story. And so what he told me was, he said, he and his wife had a great relationship. He totally loved this woman and she loved him. They adored each other immensely. And she had done something where she had hurt her back and she couldn't get out of the pain. So the doctor said, let's do a laminectomy, which is where they do back surgery and cut off your spine and put rods in as though that's going to help. Anyway, and so what he said was it didn't help. It actually made the pain worse. And her pain kept progressing to the point where morphine was the only thing that would limit the pain. And he said she was walking by me one day limping, in such pain, and I could see the pain on her face and the life had been seeping out of her face for months as this has gone on. And I was I looked at her in this state and I thought to myself, you know what, I would do anything to take away her pain. I love her so much. Well, within a few weeks, her pain started getting better. A couple of weeks later, his pain started from no injury and nothing, right? And so we did some stuff. I had a couple more access tools by that time. We did some stuff and he got out of 99% of his pain that day with primarily who does this belong to and the acknowledgement that he was a healer too, which was something Shannon asked me about. And so here I am, these things that have been contributed to me, here I am being able to contribute them to other people too. And so I'm bringing all that up because, we have people who do bars, or we have bars facilitators who are like, why do I need to take a foundation class to keep my license? For that, so you can actually get the miracle that access really is. Bars is amazing. Bars is one of the greatest gifts on this planet. Bars, it literally saved my life. And in combination with all the other tools that we have, you get this toolbox that allows you the ability to not only know that miracles are possible, but actually to invite other people to actualize those miracles.
And I am really grateful you said that about bars, because you have a story that it literally saved your life. You went one session and everything was different. And I had a very similar, I wasn't contemplating suicide, but same thing. I opened my eyes and I was like, this is what it's like to be happy. Like it was a totally new energy. Even though I thought I was happy before, it was like I woke up kind of feeling like I was going on vacation every day. Like, or I had something to look forward to. It was like, oh, I'm just excited to be alive. But I've definitely worked with people, and there's been comments in the group too that they get their bars run and they're like, I don't know if I felt anything. And you become more aware. One of the gifts of bars is awareness. And
Yeah.
so for a lot of people like you, talk about if you're a healer, I don't even know if I knew I was aware before the conversations and access, but then things come into your worlds. And I've even had people say after a bar session, oh, but I actually feel more sad or depressed or whatever. And that's why when you talk about the tools, like who does it belong to? These really simple questions.
Yeah. And
Exponential, like, yeah.
no, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, like you're about to say, it exponentializes it. And it also furthers it more over time, because the more you can undo, when you do who does this belong to, and you undo where you bought that as yours, now that thing can be in your presence, but you just see it as a thing in your presence, not something you are. And that's the thing that we so often make the mistake of. But that's also what bars gives you is an awareness of the energy and the space and the consciousness and the joy and the ease that you are, which is way different than all this pitter patter, like smacking of energies that we get when we're aware of other people's worlds. And so it it truly gives you this sense of you being able to be in the world as you, but not needing to separate from other people, being able to include other people in your world in a way that doesn't limit you or take you down anymore, which is not something a lot of people have. Most people are at the whim of other people's points of view and other and all the stuff they're aware of. So like you said, people get a lot more aware during bars. And the funny thing is, like, I've had that too, where people go, I'm much sadder after the bars you ran on me. And I would ask them, are you much sadder or are you much more aware? And they go, what do you mean? I'm like, well, do you have any sad people around you? They go, everyone. Okay, so are you more aware of their sadness? And they go, oh, oh my God, yeah. I said, so are you sad, or is your sadness starting to go away, which is actually creating a space where you're even more aware of theirs? And they go, oh my gosh. And I said, yeah, what would it be like for you to know you and actually get to be you? And they go, I have no idea. And I go, okay, so just for a moment right now, if you were truly being you, who would you be? And they go, oh, that's got a different energy to it. Cool. Everything that doesn't allow it, pock and pot. Now, if you're truly being you, what would you be? Oh, it wouldn't be all this stuff. Ooh, that's got to, okay. Everything that doesn't allow it, pock and pot it. Okay. If you're truly being you, where would you be? When would you be? Why would you be? And how would you be? And they go, whoa. Um, oh, so different than I thought. Okay. So everything that doesn't allow that, right, wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. And they start to realize that they are a space that is something that they've never been taught to acknowledge, never been invited to acknowledge, and in fact have been taught to ignore in favor of what other people have going on and what other people require. And so even that, is those tools, that's something people get from bars class, foundation class. But you start to realize that we're not who we think we are. We're not who we thought we were. We're not who we've created ourselves as to interact with other people who have dynamically different points of view. We are actually action walking. We are joy walking. We are ease walking. We truly are this beautiful, energetic creature walking through the world that could truly be magical if we would choose to be as magical as we already are.
When you say that, that's one of the things that you show me in Access is it's you're far greater than you think you are. So when you say, you're not, there's so much more. And I know I at first was like, oh no, there's probably this horrible, awful thing wrong with me. Or if I look and it's like, oh no, with when you ask these questions and you get your bars run,
Wow.
the junk goes away, the stuff that's not you without. And I also love it's not like someone doing something to you, it's you get to get rid of all this stuff that uncovers this gift. And like you say, these energies, like one of the things you are phenomenal with is being and speaking in energy and showing people the beautiful energies they are. Like you have a gift, and there's so much more you do. So uh yeah, but it's like the bars. I mean, I know when I first came across that, I remember watching a video with you and Gary that was on the Access website. Really, it's not there. It's a really old video, and seeing it, I was like, I don't know who these two guys are from California or what bar. I don't. It sounded crazy to me, and I was like, but I guess I'll go to the class. I was because someone said it just gets you out of the way of you. And I
Yeah.
thought, whatever that is, okay. It's like we all end up finding it, but was the beginning of, like you said, this energy. There's so much more, like these
So,
questions, tools, and that's
and it's this amazing gateway to the recognition of you. And with the more that's available, it just gets more, you know? And and to it's interesting because I know you do, I know I do, and I think probably everybody out there has people in their lives where they see they could choose so much more that they just don't. But that's because that's not a reality to them, that is them and that they have that choice. And it may not even be valuable because it's not what was valued in them while they were growing up or what other people value about them. And they place a high value on other people's value of them. But it's like, if we recognize that and we see that in other people, then what else are we capable of that we're not choosing? What do other people like? If you were to be around somebody who had absolutely no judgment of you, if you were to like look through Emily's eyes at you, all of you watching, it's going to be tougher for Emily. But if you were to look at Emily through Emily's eyes at you, what else are you capable of that you haven't been acknowledging or choosing or giving yourself credit for being? And if you just take a moment with that, like think of somebody who would have absolutely no judgment, have total caring for you, and look through their eyes at you. What do they see in you that you haven't been willing to? And will you allow yourself to start seeing that now? Start being aware that that is actually who you are and what you are. Everything that doesn't allow that, will you destroy and uncreate it, please? Right, wrong, good and bad, pod and pock, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. And if y'all are brand new and you haven't heard the clearing statement, go to theclearingstatement.com where I explain it for 20 minutes. It's a dynamic personal development upgrade, shall we say. It's one of the parts of Access, and you get it in the bars class, but it's when you learn how to use it in the bars class. But it's one of the elements that allows you to truly change your past. So it doesn't have to haunt you anymore, along with bars. Bars does the same thing, but it also opens up this space for a far greater future, both bars and the clearing statement. And, we do Access because we love seeing the change that people get. It's one of the greatest gifts there is. And to get emails of somebody whose life is transformed is like, that is just the greatest gift. And there are certain times where I'll think about the space I was in or the lack thereof 20 years ago. Like when you get me on here and ask me to talk about it, it's like the difference in life now. And you could say, oh, well, yeah, 20 years, you've had a lot of time. No, the difference within the first day, that's where my journey really started of being alive. And I was 30 years old, and my journey started to being alive then. And but within weeks, within months, like 3 months after starting Access, I didn't recognize my life, and I loved it so much more. So it doesn't, you hear me talk about 20 years, you hear Emily talk about many years, you hear, other facilitators talk about years upon years, but that's just an acknowledgement. Okay, they've been doing it this long, but the change occurs from day one. And it's the extent to which you are willing to use the tools and actually get that there's a different reality available, even if you don't know what that reality is. And let me put it this way, you don't know what that reality is. How could you? You've lived this other old reality for a long time. There's no way to know what a totally new, totally different reality would be until you choose to go there and uncover it. This is the adventure you've been waiting for your whole life, guys, to actually create your reality, not to suffer the one you were handed and to suffer the one you've been living as though it's yours. If you are not light and happy and joyful most of the time, it's not your reality. Meme, okay? Please recognize that. If you're not light, happy, and joyful most of the time, it's not your reality, because what's true for you always makes you lighter. A lie always makes you heavier. And it's all those heavinesses are all just a bunch of friggin' lies that have nothing to do with you.
And can I just say, I love when you first started talking about you and Shannon running bars and how you wouldn't have been able to afford it, but you traded sessions. And
Yeah.
so I just like to acknowledge when and 20 years later, how often do you get your bars run? Almost.
As often as possible. But when I get bars run, a lot of times it's, Gary and I trading bars, and my bars will run for 6 hours at a time, many, 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 many times. And if you looked at that logically, you'd be like, how can anybody have that happen? And it's it just is one of those things. But also, there's a level of change that I demand of myself and to be and to keep moving forward into. And so what happens is it's all of these points of view for billions of lifetimes that are there that don't allow some part of magic to show up, that are dissipating as we do the bars. So, pardon me, I'm sinking in my chair. Um, that don't allow, so the bars dissipate that, because what it's dissipating is everything that doesn't allow the lightness and the possibilities to show up. And we talk about bars kind of like a miracle, because it is. And at the same time, the change somebody gets from it is what they get. Like Shannon said, at the worst you feel like you had a good massage, at the best your whole life will change. And so, but please don't judge it as much by the way it feels as by what you notice different in your life. And if what you notice seems even more intense, that means the bars actually worked. And when I've had people come to me and go, like people who had a lot of pain in their body, they'll get bars and then they'll notice the pain dissipates and then it feels like it gets worse. And they go, your bars fucked me up. And I'm like, and that's when I see, for me, what I always go to is the question I always want to know is, what is greater about you as a result of this that doesn't match this reality? So that person with body pain or that person with sadness or whatever, when they feel like they have more of it after, it's because their capacities have increased. Now, all that's required is to learn to live with those capacities, but undo the fixed points of view and the fixed stuff, which is where like foundation and ESB and choice of possibilities, COP comes in, is how undoing the fixed stuff, like having the tools to undo the fixed stuff around your capacities so that they can be the capacities they are, so they don't seem like the limitations. One of my favorite sayings is, what if everything you thought was a wrongness of you is actually a strongness of you? Well, after bars, your strongnesses start to raise dynamically. But if your only reference point for it is that you're messed up and all of that, then that's the box you're going to try to put it into. So we need some of the other tools to bust apart that box so you can actually be the greatness that is emerging from your point of view. The greatness is there, but are you going to allow yourself, you have to get it from your point of view. This is greatness emerging. This is not pathetic increasing. I've not met one person in the world that has gotten more pathetic after bars. Not one. Not one.
I'm so glad we had this conversation. I think what you just said there, I've never actually heard you say it in that way, is the greatest. You're so good with analogies or the ways bars and questions and access and the tools work together if you'd like them to. Uh, Thank you. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly that. If you'd like them to.
Yeah.
And we also have to realize that there are a lot of people in life that don't want them to. They're vested in their story. A lot of people need to, from their point of view, maintain themselves as victims to maintain their relationships where they've created themselves as a victim. Because they also have the point of view, if I instantly showed up as powerful as I am, that would mean that I was lying to this person my whole life who's been keeping me down. And I'm not willing to let them know that that's a lie. And I'm not willing, and so we got to realize that people have their stories and people have their reasons, and it's okay. And if you're one of those people with a story and a reason, it's okay. But one of the gifts of access is we shine the light on everything, but with no judgment. So like if you're in a relationship or if you put yourself, if you put yourself in this place in life where you feel sort of downtrodden and small, which I did dynamically before access. That was the only place I would allow myself to go, always around everybody, like around other guys. I always felt like I was the ugly one. I was the one with the ugly body. I was the one women wouldn't like. Around, people with money, I was always the one who never had any. Around people who were smart, I was always smarter than they were, but I always thought I wasn't. And so I know what it is to put yourself in this pathetic place or less than you place and to fight for it, which is interesting. Let me say this thing about those of you who have done that and made yourselves pathetic. Roughly 90 to 9,000% of the time in working with people that have chosen that, when we finally get underneath it, we find that at some point in their lives, they were way too powerful from their point of view or from the point of view of the people around them. Okay. There's not one of you out there that is truly pathetic. I know this sounds weird, and I know a lot of you are like, what? So even some of you who know that, there's a couple areas of your life where you're still making yourself pathetic. There's not one of you out there that is truly pathetic. Not one. How do I know this? I know stuff. And I've been working with, I don't know, a million people at this point around the world. It's like, I know stuff. Okay. I've been working with a lot of people. Um, and I'm, and so if you get that idea that you're pathetic is always a lie somehow. You can ask, what is the lie, spoken or unspoken, that I'm functioning from? Then we have a ton of other access tools to start changing this, because it's not one we're usually willing to see directly. But if you can get this idea that when you were probably a little kid, you exhibited, or maybe some other lifetime, who knows, you exhibited so much power in some way that you scared people, and you don't want them to feel bad. You don't want them to be scared. So you go, no, I'm not that. So you have to stay in a constant state of judgment of you to prove that you're not this. And it's where so much of our self-talk of judgment comes from, and our wrongness, and our need to pretend that we're less, and our need to have less money than we know we desire, our need to have less fun than we know we desire. All of these things stem primarily from proving we're not as potent as we actually are. So everything you've all done to prove you're not as potent as you actually are, and everything you've done to only allow the information into your world that supports that story, so you don't have to change your story, because that story is a great story because it allows you to have a predictable future rather than a chaotic, continuously changing future, which you'd have to have if you gave up the story. So this story is basically your anchor. It's where you put a pin in the frigging ground, and now your little string just runs around that pin continuously. Everything that is, and everything you've seen is the value of that, which is actually the destruction of you and your happiness. Will you destroy and uncreate it, please? Right and wrong, good and bad, pod and pod, call nine, shorts, boys, and beyonds. And by the way, one other thing, it is okay to be happy. In fact, the earth would love it if you were actually happy more. The earth is suffering not because, well, yes, it's got pollution and it's got a lot of unconsciousness and anti-consciousness, but one of the greatest energies that would change it the fastest is actually us getting happy, and us actually recognizing that as a valuable product, because happy and light go together. So if we're actually choosing according to what makes us happy, we think that's going to be bad for other people, or we're going to choose just for us. No, when you choose from what makes you happy, you choose from what's true for you. What's true for you is that you're actually an infinite being that is connected with all other beings, which is why you love horses and dogs and nature and unicorns and like blades of grass and beautiful things and people that don't judge. That's what's actually true for you. So this getting happy is actually choosing according to what's true for you, which is actually the lightness of you, which is a natural state of happiness. And when you choose according to that, you start bringing people into your life that support that. You start bringing money into your life to support that. Because let's face it, is it easier to be happy if you're not stressed about money all the time? Yeah. You start bringing relationships into your life that support that. And so this is a choice that we could actually now choose to make, recognizing that it is actually the gift of us to us and the gift of us to the world to actually choose to be happy, which is the lightness that we are, and to come out of all that we've done to prove that we're pathetic and not potent and not capable and not able. You are fully capable. You are fully able. You are way more potent than you've ever given yourself credit for. And so I say again, what if everything you thought was a wrongness of you is actually a strongness of you? But if you're going to be happy, you're going to have to actually choose it, which is why we have that thing, happiness is just a choice. And putting the word just in there really messes with people, because in actuality, it's not just a choice, but it is just a choice. It's a choice you have to make. So if you desire it, say right now, I am choosing happiness, even if I don't know how to get there. Dear universe, dear consciousness, dear access, please help. But if you're going to do that, you're also going to have to get over every victim story that you've been telling. Every victim story that, oh, I don't have enough money because I'm a victim. You know what? So was I. I don't have enough happiness because I'm a victim. So was I. I can't do this stuff. I can't be successful in life because I'm a victim. So was I. I didn't realize it, but I was perpetrating such a dynamic victim story on myself. And what you have to realize about victim is victim, victimizer, and control go together. The person who's playing the victim is actually victimizing others to control them and to control themselves and to control the world around them. So here's a process for you that may also help. What energy, space, consciousness, choice, magic, miracles, mysteries, and possibilities can I be to be out of control, out of definition, out of limitation, out of form, structure, significance, out of linearity, and out of concentricities for all eternity with total ease? Everything that doesn't allow that, right, wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. One more time. What energy, space, consciousness, choice, magic, miracles, mysteries, and possibilities can you and your body be to be out of control, out of definition, out of limitation, out of form, structure, significance, out of linearity, and out of concentricities for all eternity with total ease? Everything that doesn't allow it, right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. Ooh, what a morning.
What a morning. And if you're watching this and you've been curious about what's after bars, there's this class called Foundation. We just had like a little mini foundation class.
Uh-huh. You're welcome.
That's kind of what it's like. Yeah.
That is actually kind of what it's like.
Yeah.
This beautiful introduction to
Mhm.
having a different platform for your life and living
Yeah.
that you probably always desired but didn't know you could have, and the tools to actually get there. And somebody said, how do I create the money for the foundation class? Number one, ask. Okay. Number one, and number two, pock and pot everywhere you decided you can't create it, and everywhere you've been making yourself right for not creating the money. And we'll be having a conversation about that at another time. But wanted you to have that because that can be a start to changing it. What if everything were truly changeable?
Yeah.
Bars is the best beginning I can imagine. And what if everything were truly changeable?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Amazing Kitten Herder of the World. You're wonderful.
Bye, everybody. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.